Good morning, Pelham Road. Well, I may be interrupted several times. I'm taping this in the church picnic area, and there's a guy over here not 100 yards from me with a chainsaw. So every time he cranks up, I'm just going to shut this down. So this one may be spliced together several times. This is Halloween week, and I would like you to help me in the comment section below if you don't mind. I'd like to know your favorite Halloween songs, your favorite spooky songs, your favorite songs of this season, the things that mean Halloween to you. All right? My favorite is A Spooky Little Girl Like You. I know there's several versions of that, so I guess my favorite version would be the Atlanta rhythm sections. Also, as a public service announcement, I'll remind you that COVID cases are rising again. All across the country, deaths and cases. These are difficult days, and I just wanted to pause to remind you that there are some basic things that you can do, you can control. One is to wear a mask. So if you're out in public, wear a mask. Stay 6 feet away from folks too if you're out in public. It's not a mask or 6 feet, it's both. Also remember you to wash your hands. Nothing replaces that age-old strategy that your parents taught you, which was to wash your hands with hot water. So do that. And if you have to go out a lot during the day, then take you some hand sanitizer with you. If you can't get to some hot water, you can use that. All right? So let's do what we can to protect ourselves and to protect others and stay safe. Well, I'll continue where I left off yesterday. Yesterday, I concluded with discerning between the classic and the popular. I used music to illustrate my point. I imagine, however, though, you have never read Scripture practicing this kind of discernment. The most typical scenario is that you have never been instructed as to how to read Scripture. The next most typical scenario is that you were told a certain way to read Scripture at the age of 7, which made sense at the age of 7, but now it no longer makes sense as you're an adult. You also had a coat at the age of 7 that fits you pretty well. It would be the height of foolishness to think that coat would fit you today. Likewise, it is totally okay to trade in childhood reading strategies for plans more fitting of an adult. Now, if you were lucky enough to be told anything about how to read Scripture, I imagine it went something like this. You read Scripture like it's a field, like it's a pasture. It's all level. To question any portion of it is to question all of it. So it's all just the same. Thou shalt not bear false witness, which is you shouldn't lie. It's just not a good thing to lie. Well, that's part of the 10 Commandments. Well, in your way of reading, that is equal to, by night on my bed I sought the one that I love, which is Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 1. Each carries the same weight in this method of reading. To question the legitimacy of the second would undermine the authority of the first, or so people would tell you. What we failed to inform you of is that culture is highly significant and highly influential in the Bible. I mean, think about this. The Bible actually has slavery in it that it accepts as the business of the day. Well, it's just because it's in the Bible, that doesn't mean it's divine. I mean, we know now that that's absolutely the opposite of divine. But its culturally influence is what put it there. And so it's not to be applauded, it's to be avoided. And so we didn't give you that strategy. We didn't tell you that some of this Bible is very culturally dependent. And you have to be discerning. And you have to be a discerning reader to be able to determine what is Holy Script and what is this, cultural influence. Now, I've tried to illustrate that with music, but I think I can also illustrate it with your parents. You have parents, and your parents have provided you, I would imagine, a lot of wise guidance over the years. And you can look back and you can think about a lot of good things that they've told you, but you can also look back and think, well, they told me not to invest in Facebook either. I told them I wanted to, but they said, what does Facebook make? I can't think of the product it makes. And so you didn't. That was bad guidance. You can look at several things that your parents told you over the course of time that weren't malicious, that just happened to be wrong. They were influenced by their own culture and by their own theories of belief. So, you know how to discern. You know how to listen to people and be able to discern between what is something worth holding on to and what is something worth just listening to and letting go. So, I know it's hard to admit out loud what you often think, but I know you think it. Sometimes you read scripture and you think, that sounds so culturally bound. That sounds so primitive. Getting the plane flying over now. You hear that piece of scripture and you think to yourself, you know, that just doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like the God of love, the God of Jesus Christ. That just doesn't sound right at all. Well, there you go. You're discerning. You're hearing the cultural come through. It sounds more like walking on sunshine than it does somewhere over the rainbow. And if you can listen, I know you can hear, and I know you can separate the eternal in Scripture. So let's just conclude with a little exercise. Women should be silent in churches. They're not permitted to speak, but should be subordinate, as the law says. If there's anything they desire to know, let them speak to their husbands at home. It's shameful for a woman to speak in church. Right out of the Bible, 1 Corinthians 14, 34 and 35. And now here's the second passage. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoings, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things. It believes all things. It hopes all things. It endures all things. Love never ends. And now faith, hope, and love abide. These three. But the greatest of these is love. Can you spot the classic one? Can you spot of those two passages the one that stirs our soul? I believe you can. The scripture is not level. It is not flat. It is full of peaks and valleys. And I say, for inspiration's sake, go towards the peaks. Look towards the mountains. I'll see you tomorrow.